right, wonderful. You can keep dropping those into the chat. I'm going to get us started and people will keep rolling in. So my name is Julianne Gorin. I am filling in for Brandy DeCarly, big shoes to fill. Um, but welcome to Dispatches, where members gather from around the world for a short presentation from a fellow member. And then we break out into small groups for conversations. So I really appreciate everyone coming in. All right, so today we have Katlin Bowman Adamczyk, who is a marine geochemist and oceanographer with the Global Seabed Mineral Resources Group at the U.S. Geological Survey's Pacific Coastal and Marine Science Center in California. She was also a member of the EC50 cohort in 2025, or 2024, I apologize. She has a Ph.D. and a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Sciences from Wright State University and completed postdoctoral training at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Prior to joining USGS, which she will explain for anyone who's international, her work focused on mercury biogeochemistry in the global ocean, which you may also have to explain, Caitlin. She has completed over 15 expeditions, including a 65-day voyage to the North Pole, thousands of miles of hydrographic transects in the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, and seafloor exploration via human-occupied and remotely operated deep sea vehicles. Today, Caitlin will share experiences and insights from two volcanic arc systems in the South Aegean and the Aleutian Islands. Thank you so much for joining us, Caitlin. I'm really excited for your presentation. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to share some slides today so I can show images. All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm joining you from Santa Cruz, California. As Julianne said, I have a background in marine chemistry. So a lot of my work has been studying how mercury cycles through the ocean. But I've always been interested in the deep sea, and I did a little bit of a pivot in 2022 and took a job working for USGS. And now I work on the Global Seabed Mineral Resources team. And so our team studies mineral occurrences on the seafloor and in the deep ocean. So things like ferromanganese crust, nodules, and sulfides. And sulfides have really been the focus of my work this year. USGS is a scientific agency within the US government. We don't deal with policy, regulation, lawmaking. We get to do the fun science. So it's a really fun place to work. We go out and collect data, do observations, research studies, and make that data available to the public. I don't normally work on volcanoes, which is great because I've learned a lot this year and I've had opportunities to explore places that I don't normally work in. So this year I've worked in two different island arc systems, and these form in places where two tectonic plates are being pushed together. And the one that's heavier is going to slide underneath, and that sliding creates frictional heat that melts the mantle and creates volcanic islands and seamounts. Seamounts are like volcanoes, but they're completely underwater. And so I was working in Santorini, Greece, which is part of the Aegean Arc. So here's the subduction zone down here, and all of the red triangles are volcanoes. And then in June, I was working in the Aleutian Arc. So you can see this dark line, Aleutian Trench, that's where the subduction is happening. And then we have this arc of volcanic islands. And sometimes you have cracks in the volcanoes where cold seawater can seep in, and that cold seawater is heated by the hot rock. So there's magma heating the rock, cold seawater interacts in that system and creates what we call vent fluid. The chemistry is so different from seawater, we give it a different name. And that vent fluid can then escape through different cracks, and that creates hydrothermal activity. Why study hydrothermal activity? I think deep sea hydrothermal vents are some of the coolest places on our planet. There are a lot of different reasons why we study them. But for these projects, the Santorini project was mostly focused on understanding volcanic hazards. So if we have a lot of vents at Santorini, we could be releasing pressure, which could mean smaller eruptions. But the vent fluid has a lot of metals, and those metals can precipitate to form minerals, potentially closing channels where gas can escape, and that could lead to a bigger eruption. So the Santorini project was really trying to understand and make better prediction models for when the volcano is going to erupt. And then with USGS, I think a lot about the sulfide minerals. So in this video, this is from the Galapagos, a different type of hydrothermal system. But the actual rock that you're seeing, the chimney, is minerals that have precipitated from that hot vent fluid. And so a lot of the work that my team has done on hydrothermal vents is at spreading centers, and we're going to be comparing the sulfide minerals that we find in these volcanic arcs to places like the Galapagos spreading center. So in March, I spent an entire month on the RRS Discovery. This was an expedition led by the National Oceanography Center in the UK, exploring the caldera of Santorini, Greece. The depth within the caldera is about 150 to 200 meters deep. The most recent eruption can be seen in the middle here. And then we also left the caldera and went to the northeast to study Colombo volcano. This is a seamount that's completely underwater. The BBC came on board during the end of the expedition and did a really nice write-up if you're interested in reading more. But again, this expedition was focused on improving models that predict eruptions. And so we had a lot of instrumentation that we deployed on the seafloor at the beginning of the expedition and then picked up at the end. Things like ocean bottom seismometers, instruments that can record magnetic signals. And so the goal from that data is to understand the fluid flow pathways that are below the seafloor, so below the floor of the caldera where we can't visually see. I was doing radium measurements in seawater, so measuring radium in the vent fluids coming out of the caldera, and then within the seawater flowing around the caldera to try and understand where the vent fluid's coming from, where it's going. Radium is really cool because you can use it to age fluid and seawater. And so these are specialized pumps that are attached to a wire. They pump thousands or hundreds of liters of seawater through filters, and we can use that for radium analysis. But our main tool on this expedition was a remotely operated vehicle. So here's some images of the ROV being deployed. And then when the ROV is in the water, we are in this control room. It's two shipping containers fused together, filled with computers. In the front row, we have a pilot that's driving the ROV and a co-pilot that's using the manipulator arms. And then we have our chief scientist or co-chief scientist who is leading the dive. And then I hang out in the back row. We have data logging software. So we're logging all the different things that we're seeing. We're paying attention to the navigation, making sure the video is recording, looking at sensor data. So it's a really busy, exciting room to be in. And I'll share a few videos of what we saw on the caldera floor. So the video on the right, in the middle, you have this kind of greenish color. That's a pool of liquid CO2, and this is in the caldera of Santorini. And all of the orange-brown stuff around it is bacteria. So you have CO2 that's seeping out of the caldera. The bacteria are feeding on that CO2, and they kind of grow and build up in a mound shape. And eventually the mound gets heavy and collapses, and it makes these pool-like depressions. So there were dozens of these pools in this area, and then they're filled with CO2-rich fluid. And so what we're doing in this video is sticking one of our major fluid samplers right into that pool to try and collect some. You can see the bacteria flock kind of being stirred up by the ROV. And then in the top left is a video from the Colombo seamount. And here, this is a vent named the Champagne vent because it's very bubbly. And in this video, we're using the ROV to collect a gas sample. So if you look in the funnel, there's kind of a white color at the top. So you can actually see the seawater being pushed out as the gas-rich fluid takes over. And once that funnel is full, we'll just move that lever with the other manipulator arm, suck up that gas-rich fluid, and then sample it back in the lab, see what type of gases are there. And then the bottom left is just a fun shark that came to hang out for a short while. Okay, moving on now to the Aleutian Arc. This was an expedition that took place in June on the RV Atlantis with the HOV, human operated vehicle Alvin. We had a broad range of goals for this expedition. Santorini is a well-studied volcano. We have a lot of data and a lot of information from that area. The Aleutian Arc is unexplored or underexplored at best. So this expedition was really just exploratory, seeing what's on the seafloor. We were able to map over 7,000 square kilometers of new area. So we knew the depth of this region, but we had no idea what the seafloor looked like. So it was a really exciting expedition. We're seeing new features overnight with the multi-beam mapping that we're doing, and then we're going to get to actually visually see this submersible as we dive each day. And so the main goals for this expedition were identifying earthquake and tsunami hazards, characterizing the diversity of cold water coral habitats. And those cold water corals are really important habitats for Alaska fisheries. And then looking for hydrothermal minerals. And so to end, I just want to kind of walk you through what it's like to do a cruise with Alvin. Here you can see the sample basket. So we have tubes and containers, and these are all of the different things that we use to collect biological and geological samples. You can see one of the pilots peeking out of the window. So these front 3 windows are for the pilot, and then there's 2 more on either side of the sphere for the 2 scientific observers that are inside. The image on the right is looking down into the hatch. And so this yellow tube is not normally there. The ladder gets removed before the hatch is sealed. You can see it's pretty tight space. We have 1 pilot and 2 scientific observers that sit on either side. Each observer has an iPad that can be used to control Alvin's cameras. So we're recording video, we're recording data, marking samples, and directing the dive. And so you board Alvin on deck, kind of climb up these stairs, descend the ladder gets removed, the hatch is closed, and then you're craned off of the vessel and dropped into the ocean. Alvin works with amazing swimmers, and the swimmers are Alvin pilots, and they're also crew members from the RV Atlantis. This is in the Bering Sea. So cold water, they're in 7 mil wetsuits. And when Alvin is being lifted off of the deck, the swimmers are just sitting on top, holding on. And once Alvin is in the water, there's a T and a rope that goes around the T. And so they release the rope, and then Alvin's free floating. You can see one of the swimmers in this image has a phone. And so they jump in the water and hold the phone up so it doesn't get wet, and then that plugs into the top of the sub. So right now we're sealed inside Alvin, and we hook up the phone, and then we can talk to the swimmers. So on my dive, one of the container lids popped off during deployment. And so we can talk on the phone and say, can you please close coral quiver number 4? And then the image on the right is from inside the sub. So you can see the swimmers come down, make sure everything in the sampling basket is okay, remove some safety lines, they give you a wave, and then you're descending. Dives can last up to 8 or 9 hours. I was in the sub for about 7 hours, down to a depth of 1,700 meters. And so yeah, these are images from inside the sub. We're at the surface in the image on the left. You can tell because the water is still light. There isn't enough room for 1 person to stand up in the middle, but the sphere is mostly computers. You have oxygen bottles. So you use 1 or 2 during the dive, and then you have a bunch of backup air, CO2 scrubbers. The kitchen packs you lunch. So you have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the seafloor together during the middle of the dive. And there are no bathrooms. There's a hatch in the floor with some plastic bottles underneath if needed. At the end of the dive, the vessel has a general idea of where we are based on our waypoints, but you often drift, get kind of pushed and pulled as you're coming up through the water column. And ascending and descending can take anywhere from half an hour to over an hour. And so when you're on the vessel, you're watching. The sail of Alvin has this bright red color. So you're looking for that red sail to pop up out of the water. You deploy a small boat with the two swimmers. They swim out, hook up the phone. You catch up. Hey, what did I miss today? What's going on the vessel? And then the swimmers kind of right on top of Alvin, the vessel has to swing around and like swing the aft end toward the submersible. They attach a tow line, pull you in. The swimmers loop the rope around the T, and then they hoist you back up onto the ship. It's quite a frenzy when the submersible first comes on deck, especially working with live biological samples. So we're kind of quickly taking all of the samples into the lab, doing the processing that we need to do. Alvin has a really great high definition video that takes a long time to download and process. So there's also a GoPro camera on the brow of the submersible. And so at the end of the day, we watch the GoPro time lapse, and we all meet in the library. We watch the dive video. The different thing about Alvin, with the ROV, we're getting a live feed from the seafloor. We're all sitting in that van. We can see what's happening. But with Alvin, you don't know what the scientists are experiencing. So it's really exciting to sit down together at the end of the day to watch this time-lapse video, hear what they saw, the pilots chime in, what went right, what went wrong. What did we collect, what did we not collect, and what do we still need? So we check in every night, go over the dive, and then plan the dive for the next day. And I'll end with a few of my favorite findings from this expedition. The map on the left, you can see this big chunk missing from the shelf, and then this debris train. This is a huge landslide that we discovered close to the epicenter of the 1960 earthquake. And this earthquake generated a tsunami that leveled Hilo, Hawaii. So it was a huge earthquake tsunami event. This area had never been mapped before, and we think that we found the landslide that was potentially connected to that tsunami. So this is an area that we'll be going back to and doing more work to try and improve our understanding of earthquake and tsunami hazards. My favorite animal we collected was this beautiful sea spider. And then my favorite rock is in the top right. This is a ferromanganese crust, and these crusts form over millions of years from precipitation of metals in seawater. So that rock I'm holding is millions of years of ocean history. And I'll end there.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Caitlin. As I said at the beginning when we were chatting, I've heard a lot about the Alvin, but I've never seen it in action, and the videos were great, and yeah, very, very cool. So I really appreciate that. Tom had a question, but I'm going to encourage Tom actually to ask you in the breakout rooms. So we're going to jump into breakout rooms. And Caitlin is actually going to be moved through the rooms. So Tom, you can have a chat with her when she comes through your room, as I think we all will have questions. And Alvin looks amazing, but it is definitely a tight space. Yeah, long time in a tight space. So what we're going to do now is Felix is going to break us out all into random rooms, and we can have a conversation. And then about 5 minutes before the end of the hour, we will convene again and close out dispatches. Thank you again, Caitlin.